By far the biggest problem for new investors is not understanding how much time is needed to put the odds of success in your favor. If you have endurance, you're gonna beat literally 97 or 99% of the genius stock pickers. Gaining money is like being an optimist and taking a risk. Staying rich is like the exact opposite. You need to learn how to live a rich life and figure out what that is for you. The best that you can do when you're studying the economy or investment markets is just putting the odds of success in your favor. Certainty does not exist in the finance world, but certainty is what sells. One of the best financial skills you can have is a very finely tuned BS detector. And I think having that sensitivity to information is really critical for new investors. If you have endurance in your investing and you can keep it going for years or decades, you don't need to be a genius stock picker. If you have endurance, you're gonna beat literally 97 or 99% of the genius stock pickers. Picking the right stocks is hard. It's supposed to be hard. Like, there's no world in which everybody who tries to beat the market is gonna do it. Of course it's hard. But having endurance is like largely in your control. It's so much easier to just be patient than it is to pick the right stocks every single day. Like somebody who outperforms the market by 1 percentage point per year, and they can do that for 10 years, that's amazing. But somebody who earns average returns and does it for 20 years is gonna have way more money. You do it for 30 years, you're gonna be filthy rich. A lot of financial advisors will say that one of the hardest things they do as an advisor is getting their clients to spend money because they've been so conditioned to save, that when they finally retire at 65, they don't know how to spend. They have no clue how to spend money. You need to learn how to live a rich life and figure out what that is for you. For some people, like for me, it's just like my happy state is like sitting on the couch in sweatpants, reading a book, going for a walk with my wife. That's my rich life that I love doing. And to do that, I need to be independent and autonomous. So I can do that all day long. I can do that on a Wednesday afternoon. So you just have to figure out what is the little thing that's gonna make you happy. And I think a lot of people's problem is that society tells you what you're supposed to do to be happy. You're supposed to have a nice car, you're supposed to have a big house, you're supposed to wear nice clothes. That's what society tells you to do. And for some people, that might be the case. For other people like me, I think it's not. That would not ever make me happy. What does make me happy is independence. So I think you just have to figure out the little things that make you happy rather than just being forced by society into what they want you to do. Well, one thing that's important about the concept of having enough and independence is that when most people, even if they are independent, they wake up every morning, what they want to do is go to work. One of the big problems with the FIRE movement, the financial independence retire early movement, where people are like, they're going to be a super saver and then retire at age 31, whatever it be. So many of those people who actually did that and retired at age 31, once they retired, after about 2 weeks, they were bored out of their mind. And if they did it for 6 months, they were clinically depressed. Because for most people, you want to be productive. You want to keep doing it. So having enough doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stop working. It just means you're going to keep doing only the work that you want to do. It's that when you have enough, you get to pick and choose which of those things you're going to end up doing. If I were on my deathbed tomorrow, would I regret working hard and saving a lot of money? And my answer is absolutely not. It would give me so much pleasure to know that my wife and my 2 young kids are going to be fine. Even if you want to give money away to your family, don't wait until you die. Don't make your kids wait or like hope you're going to die so they can get their inheritance. Give it to them when it really matters, which for most people is in their 30s and 40s. If you wait until you die at age 90 and your kids are 60 and then they get your money, like what's the purpose of that? Give it to them when they need it. When they're raising kids and whatnot, that's when they need your money. That if you are a wealthy person, and I'm not talking billionaires, if you just have a moderate amount of wealth that you might pass along to your kids someday, that your two options are kind of, at least to some extent, hurt their ambition or risk some level of strife. If 18-year-old Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk inherited $1 billion, wouldn't have made any difference to their ambition. They would not have slowed them down by 1 second. But most people, including myself, it would have. Like I was driven by fear of not making it, which is what most people are. I was scared shitless that I was not going to find the right career, that I wasn't going to make it, and that's what drove me. Some people don't need that, but I think it's very rare. I think the huge majority of people, if you give them an easy life, they will take it and embrace it with both hands. Good opportunities are rare. Of course they are. They should be rare. It shouldn't be that anybody can just open up their stock account and find the opportunity of a lifetime. For the ordinary person, endurance and patience is 99% of what you need as an investor, because the opportunities there to invest in a low-cost index fund are available for everybody. You do it from your phone, open up a Robinhood account, buy some index funds. Anybody can do that. So gaining money is like being an optimist and taking a risk. Like being optimistic about yourself, swinging for the fences. You need that to get rich. Staying rich is like the exact opposite. You need a level of being conservative. You need to be scared. You need to be like acknowledge of all the unknown risks that are in front of us and have a financial allocation and a mindset that's going to allow you to endure them and survive them financially. You need both of those skills at the same time. When somebody is young, you would think you would say, you got 50 years in front of you. Swing for the fences, go for it. It's also when your life is the most fragile. It's when you're most likely to be laid off, most likely to change your career, most likely to break up or get divorced, whatever it would be. And so for that, you need quite a bit of financial flexibility, just cash and liquidity. So once you had some level built up, whatever the level might be for a different person, then like do something crazy. But when you graduate college and you're looking at your career, don't take the safe job, which is usually like the big company, the blue chip company. Go for the weird company.
Why?
Go for something crazy, because when you're older, when you're 40 and you have 2 kids and a mortgage, you're not going to want to take the weird job. That's when you want the stability. That's when you're probably going to want the job that has good benefits and a stable paycheck, because you need that. When you're 22 and you're not tied down by anything, don't go work for Goldman Sachs or Apple or Deloitte or something like that. Go for the weird startup where you're going to learn something completely different. And there's so many people who take the blue chip, the safe job out of college, and it puts them on a very predictable track. You're going to be an analyst for 2 years. And then if you're good, you'll get promoted to senior analyst, and then you'll get promoted to associate. It's like very stable and linear. And that's you're capping all of your upside. Or if you go for the weird company, you're either going to do one of 2 things. It's either going to fail and you're going to learn a lot from that. And then maybe when you're 40, after going through all that, then you want the stable job at the big company. If you start your career in the stable company, you're probably never going to leave. You're going to get addicted to the nice paycheck, the stable benefits, whatnot, and you're never going to take a risk and do anything else. And maybe that's okay. Maybe for some people's personalities, that's exactly what they want. But I think there is a higher level of regret for people that start in a safe company and then they get the golden handcuffs, they can't leave. And by the time they're 40 and they realize that they wanted to work at the crazy company, they can't, because they got a mortgage and 2 kids and they're saving for retirement and they can't take the risks at that level of their life. There is no one right answer in finance. I think we tend to think of finance, and finance is taught like it's math. And in math, there's one right answer for everybody. No matter who you are or where you're from or how old you are, it's just like 2 + 2 = 4 for everybody. That's how math works. And finance is, in my view, it's not like that at all. That people who are equally smart, equally educated, equally informed can come to totally different conclusions about how to manage their money. And I think once you embrace that, it does 2 things. One, it makes you less cynical about other people and less judgmental about how other people are spending their money. And 2, it gives you permission to just be like, what works for you? You don't have to worry about whether you're doing it quote unquote right or wrong. If it's working for you and it's making you happy, then maybe it's the right thing to do. And I think once you have that little nugget of like, nobody's crazy. People do crazy things, but everything that people do with their money makes sense to them. It works for them. I have a friend who's a financial advisor. He's successful now, but he grew up in abject poverty. He was homeless most of his childhood. And he told me a story one time that he remembers when he was a child and his refrigerator was empty and his mom had $3 to her name. And he said, look, $3 is not going to fill the refrigerator. It's not going to make a dent. But $3 will buy you 3 lottery tickets that will give you the potential to fill the refrigerator. And he said, until you can understand that mindset, you don't understand why these poor people are buying so many lottery tickets. When it's your only chance of hope of literally feeding your kids in this situation, it doesn't make sense. But it just shows like there's so much going on inside of people's heads, and there's no one right answer of what's the right thing to do. And I think all of us just need to find out what works for us, be a little more introspective about who we are and what we want and what our goals are, our social aspirations are, and just find a plan that works for us. Especially when, the stakes are really high in money. This is sending your kids to college, this is retiring, this is not just a little game, this is like one of the biggest areas of your life. And since it's generally not taught in high school or even college, even if you are a very smart woman, very smart guy, highly educated, you have a degree in chemical engineering, you might know nothing about money. But I always say like the two areas of your life that are going to impact everyone, no matter whether they like it or not, are health and money. It doesn't matter if you don't like those fields are going to impact your life. In most endeavors in life, there's a pretty quick payoff. So like if you go to the gym, you'll be sore tomorrow. Like there's an indication that something's working. And so people take those payoff time periods, and when they apply it to investing, if they're new to investing, they might think, oh, I'm going to invest $1,000 and I'm going to check back next Wednesday and see how it's done. And then, or maybe I'll check back, 2 weeks from now and see what's done. 6 months feels like a long time. Because if you were going to the gym for 6 months and you saw no progress, you're like, you're doing something wrong here. But in investing, like we know, it's not intuitive for people, but this is an endeavor where you might lose money over a 10-year period. And that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Investing is a very, very long endeavor. I think the closest example is like planting an oak tree. If you planted a seed in your backyard and checked it next Wednesday and you're like, oh, it doesn't work, it's a scam. You're like, no, it takes a long time. And the results are going to be magnificent, but it's going to take 50 years. And I think investing is really close to that. And it throws a lot of people off. By far the biggest problem for new investors is not understanding how much time is needed to put the odds of success in your favor. And it's not a month, it's not a year, it's something closer to 5 or 10 years before you're like, okay, if you've given it that much time, you should start to see most likely whether you're doing it right or wrong. But even in that scenario, even in 10 years, even if you're doing it right, it's not without precedent at all that maybe you've done fairly poorly. If the economy is doing really poorly, if there's a financial crisis, if there's a pandemic, whatever it might be. So that's what it's really a lifelong endeavor, and that's what screws people up if they're not familiar with that time frame. There is a lot of money to be made in the money business. And because of that, there is a lot of bad advice. And there are a lot of people who look fairly reputable and sound fairly reputable. They operate in a system where the incentives push them to giving not the best advice and charging outrageous amounts for it. And because of that, I think otherwise moral, good, well-meaning people, when they are introduced to a system where their incentives are to promote certainty or to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes, even if they're otherwise good people. These are not shysters. They are willing to sell products that are not good for people because they have the potential to make so much money themselves. And because those incentives exist in finance in a way that they don't in medicine or engineering or any other field like that, it really you have this boom bust cycle of where the incentives kind of pile up and you have a big financial bubble and then everything comes crashing down. One of the best financial skills you can have is a very finely tuned BS detector so that you can see an ad or hear a pitch and say like, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but that's a bad product that you're selling. Having that sensitivity is really important. And a lot of people don't, because there are a lot of other fields in their life that are pretty heavily regulated, medicine and whatnot. If you go to a doctor who has an MD, they are educated and tested and qualified, and the advice that they give you is very likely good advice. And in the finance world, there are things like CFP and CFA, these credentials that are pretty good, but there's no requirement that you have them. Maybe they took a regulatory exam that took them 2 weeks to study for. They have a degree from Google effectively, and they can be a financial advisor. But there's a lot of advice out there that is either bad advice or it's good advice for one person, but not for you. And I think having that sensitivity to information is really critical for new investors. In general, be very wary of certainty, including like certainty in forecasts. Like if someone says, we know that a recession is going to come in the next 6 months, or someone says, we know this stock is going to double. Any level of confidence like that is just not how the world works. The best that you can do when you're studying the economy or investment markets is just putting the odds of success in your favor. So the best you could do is be like, we're 60% confident in buying this stock. And if it's not pitched that way, if it's pitched in any level of this is a sure thing, run for your life. Certainty does not exist in the finance world, but certainty is what sells. And so that's why a lot of the pitches that are online promote this degree of certainty that I think can be really dangerous. That's a big red flag. If you go back to the world before social media, most financial advisors were gatekeepers. If you were just an average Joe and you wanted to invest for your retirement, you want to buy a mutual fund, you need to book an appointment with a guy down the street, go into his office and pay him an egregious fee and commission to do it. 15 years ago, not that long ago. an 18-year-old with an iPhone today has more financial information than a partner at Goldman Sachs did 20 years ago. The other side of that, though, are the number of people who are either promoting products they shouldn't be, or people who are innocently putting advice on social media and whatnot, that they're very innocently, they're just naive to the fact that it might be bad advice to somebody else. A 16-year-old in his mother's basement might listen to that, put his entire life savings into it and lose everything because he didn't know what the consequences of it were. So I think there's a lot of innocent bad information out there as well. You can't just put everyone in as like a bad actor. A lot of it is really innocent. And I think it's great that if you are someone who's interested in finance and you want to start a blog, start doing TikTok, start making YouTube, that's amazing. That's great. But if you turned it a little bit and said, should everyone who's interested in medicine start posting medical advice? In that situation, you're like, might not be a great idea. But we do that with finance. So that's why I can see both sides of it. And on net, I prefer this world to the old world, but it is not without consequences. Full stop.